Okay, hello everyone, welcome to our video where we're talking about Psych chapter 6, identity and personality. So there's a lot of very interesting topics in this chapter, but also a lot of different perspectives to cover. So let's get started. So first we're starting with identity. So we have self-concept is a sum of ways that we describe ourselves. We have identities, which is individual components of the self-concept related to a group in which we belong. So that's the distinction between identities and self-concept. Self-concept is just in general the ways that we see ourselves. Oh my goodness, I forgot to fill this in. We'll get there in a moment. But then identities are really the individual components of the self-concept that relate to a specific group that we are referencing right now. Right, so you have different identities depending on, the group in which you are referencing. But they're still components of your self-concept because as a whole, that's part of who you are. And self-esteem is a belief in our self-worth. I'm sorry, I forgot to write that one down for some reason, but yes, it's a belief in your self-worth. And then we have self-efficacy, which is a degree to which we see ourselves as capable of doing a given task or a skill. And then learned helplessness, again, I didn't write this one, so just listen carefully. Learned helplessness is when you have low self-esteem and low self-efficacy. So you don't think that you are able to complete a task or a skill because of the belief that you have about yourself in performing that task. And then we have locus of control. So we can have an internal or external locus of control. So internal is saying that we are in control of our success, whereas external locus of control is saying that the outside factors have more control over our success than we do. Okay, so now we're getting into the personality side of things, but they are interconnected, and you'll see that as we go through the perspectives. So first we start with Freud, which was very heavy into the psychosexual stages of personality development. He also created the ideas of the id, the ego, and the superego, where the id is the pleasure-seeking part of your brain. Your ego is your kind of the middle ground and the reasoning part of it, and then your superego is your morals. So basically saying that those three things put together balance and make up the psychosexual stages of our personality based on the tensions caused by libido, and failure to attain any of these stages will result in the manifestation as an adult. So the first stage is the oral stage from 0 to 1 years old. So you sucking, biting, things like that. The age 1 to 3, you'll have the anal stage, which is where they'll have bladder control, bowel control. And then between 3 and 6 is the phallic stage, where Freud says that there's an interest in masturbation. And then we have age 6 to puberty is known as the latent stage, where the sexual feelings are dormant. And then we have finally puberty to adulthood, which is the genital stage, and there is an increased sexual interest there in those stages. So those are Freud's stages of psychosexual personality. So Erikson also used the psychoanalytical approach. However, Erikson looked more at the social aspects of this theory. So he also had different stages that we go through, but he extended past, just in our 40s or adulthood, and really broke it down further. So Erikson's stages include 0 to 1 years old. You're gonna have trust versus mistrust. So can I have baby? Some of these are self-explanatory, but some of them I'll give a little tidbit too. So trust versus mistrust from 0 to 1 is, can the child trust the caretaker? Do they trust the caretaker is going to come back? Do they have, do they really trust this person? So that is trust versus mistrust. You have age 1 to 3 is autonomy versus shame. I think that one kind of explains itself. Little kids trying to do things on their own, like, no, I can do it, things like that. Whereas there's also, you know, in some cases, parents who say, like, oh, like, why would you do that? You shouldn't have done that, when they were, you know, trying to gain some autonomy and do things on their own, but it was, you know, brought down and shamed. So that is that stage. Then we have age 3 to 6, initiative versus guilt. Age 6 to 12, industry versus inferiority. Ages 12 to 20, identity versus role confusion. Again, I feel like that one's pretty self-explanatory. Let me make sure you can read this. Sorry. Ooh. I don't know how that happened. Oh, there we go. We have age 20 to 40, intimacy versus isolation. So that's when you start to really look to create long-term relationships outside of your family, or you are isolating yourself. Then we have 40 to 65 is generativity versus stagnation. So are you doing something purposeful in your life, or are you kind of just, you feel stuck? And a lot of the time people think that's like a midlife crisis type thing. And then 65 plus is integrity versus despair. So there's also another theory, two theories here that we're going to mention in really briefly. So we have Vygotsky, which developed a theory on cognitive development, and he was really focused on the zone of proximal development, stating that for children, this is the stage where they're developing, but they can't yet obtain a certain skill to, you know, move up or move on in their development, and they need a higher knowing influence in their development. And then we have Kohlberg's, let me go over here. Then we have Kohlberg's stages of moral development. And this, again, very general. He just stated that we have 3 main stages of moral development. 1, pre-conventional, 2, conventional, and 3rd, post-conventional. So if you're using this video as a mental checklist, great. If not, I didn't really have space to go in detail, but you could just quickly, you know, look at another video, Google those things if those things are not familiar to you. Kohlberg's stages of development and Vygotsky's cognitive development. Okay, so now let's look at more personality theories. So we have type and personality trait theory. And with this, the personality can be described by identifiable traits that carry specific behaviors. So this includes, you know, if you ever heard type A personalities, or if you do the Myers-Briggs personality test, they give you certain letters of what your personality is, and therefore some given traits that means you'll have based on this test, right? And another part of this, based on the trait perspective, is the Big 5. So you can use the acronym as OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So those also are those are traits that can be identified and people relate to, and can really take that in as being part of their personality. So definitely know the Big 5 trait perspective parts and components, characteristics of a personality as well. And here they have like a scale, like, are you high openness or low openness, high extroversion or not, agreeableness, high or low, things like that. So you really rate these things on a scale. Same idea of these other types of tests that we were talking about. Okay, we also have other perspectives that we need to consider. So we have the humanistic perspective, which is when an individual, the theory states that an individual is driven by tendency to realize their own highest potential. And this is, sorry, I just want to make sure I was saying it correctly, is influenced by positive regard. And this is how you also develop your self-concept. So it develops your self-concept and is saying that is influenced by positive regard. For example, if you are growing up and your parents had unconditional love for you, and that was apparent, then that means you had high positive regard, and you are more likely to reach self-actualization. I know we talked about that on our last video of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that is kind of related, in a sense, to attaining self-actualization. That's a humanistic perspective, that we're driven by a tendency to want that high potential for ourselves. Then we also have behavioral perspective, which says that personality is developed as a result of conditioning. and that it is deterministic, which means that people are a blank slate and their environment has control over who that person becomes. And then, of course, we have the biological approach, which is, I don't want to say the opposite of that, but it's still in the lines of nature versus nurture, and stating that behavior is explained by gene expression, right? That's easy to remember, biological approach. And then finally, we have the social cognitive perspective, which is where personality is a result of a reciprocal interaction between cognition, behavior, and environmental factors. And a lot of times you'll hear observational learning come into that. Whereas kids, right, if they watch something happen, they can learn from those consequences, and they often, exhibit the behavior that they are seeing, like monkey see, monkey do, goes into that observational learning. And that is saying social cognitive perspective. All of that affects our personality development and who we actually are. So interaction between cognition, behavior, and environmental factors results in our personality based on the social cognitive perspective. And that, again, the name kind of gives that away. Social, so think how we are interacting with others. Cognitive, we do have some level of, analyzing what's going on and judgment, that perspective. And like I said, observational learning is key in that point of view. So that was just a very brief overview. As I always say, mental checklist of the, some important theories that you should know and remember. If there's anything you didn't know, please put any questions below, and keep studying. You've got this, and I'll see you in the next video.